Welcome to Magical Internet Money. We just survived hurricanes. We're in good shape. We got coffee. It's a good life. So how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Yeah, we survived the hurricane as well. Got lucky. Only got like 6 or 7 inches of rain instead of the 25 or 22 that were supposed to happen. And so, yeah, grateful, happy, and healthy. Doing good.
Fantastic. Well, man, right now you're good. I'm good. We had power out for like 4 days, but the markets are not good. They were airstruck by Iran. And I say that only lightly because from what I know, there were no civilian casualties. So I'm not trying to make light of a terrible situation. But thank God there were, as far as I know, no civilian casualties. Even though I did see a video of like one dude getting hit by a rocket that just didn't even explode. Don't know if that's real or not, but hopefully it's CGI. What do you think is going to happen here? It's supposed to be October. It doesn't feel like October. Not only did we have the Iran thing, we also have the port strikes, and those two things together don't feel good.
Yeah, the port strikes are crazy as well, right? Because if it's like every major port in the US. And so like as we're trying to like finally come back and get our supply chains back in place and more robust and more trusted after COVID, and now we have this. And I think like the port workers are asking for an 83% increase in their pay, which seems pretty insane. What, like, have you read a lot about this?
I've seen some different numbers. I saw a 77% increase over 6 years. I saw a 50% increase over like a smaller time frame, and I'm sure that it's going to be a continued negotiation. I also saw like the average port worker makes 140K, which, by the way, if you're in crypto, you might think 140K is really not that much, especially if you're living an American lifestyle or you're living in like some of these more developed countries. Some people, 140K per year would be a ton, but if you have a family and you're making 140K, it can go really fast, especially if you're trying to buy a house and housing costs are rising, inflation is rising. And also, these guys are working like, I think the average was, it was something ridiculous. I don't want to be wrong here, but it was some ridiculous amount of hours between like 50 and 100 hours per week. I can't imagine it's 100 hours. That would be insane unless they're working 7-hour or 7-day weeks.
Unless they're working in crypto.
Yeah, unless they're working in crypto, exactly. But if it's true that they're working that many days, 140 no longer seems like they're overpaid.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on where you live. It's like it's always been true to where it's like if you live in New York City or if you live in LA, then like even if you're making 3 times the money, you're still like at poverty level, compared to someone living in where I live in rural Tennessee. I probably live in the cheapest place to live in the US. There's no state income tax. Property taxes are basically non-existent. So 140,000 here would go a really long way. 140,000 in LA is like, I don't know, like 4 dinners and like a crappy apartment,
Yeah, and then you go to Thailand and 140K, like you're living like a king. It really is a relativity. So it's not about like what is your number, it's more about where are you living, what are your expenses, and what is your number. So that's all definitely on track. Now you've traveled a bit. Where have you found your money can go the longest? The farthest, and still live a good life?
I think Buenos
Without blowing
Aires.
up any of your spots.
No, I think Buenos Aires is probably the top. You can go like, we were there in February together. You can go to dinner with like 4 or 5 friends, get the nicest steaks on the menu, order the nicest bottles of wine on the menu, sit there for 2 hours, and then afterwards it's like $30 for like 5 or 6 people who just went crazy. So I think right now that's, and also like quality of life, probably South America and then there's like awesome places in Central America, like Costa Rica. You can like end up on a beach as an expat and live like pretty cheap. Mexico's great. West Coast or East Coast, really awesome. Everybody's friendly. Like culture's basically the same as the US.
You don't have to gas me up, man, just because I'm Mexican.
What's up?
I said you don't have to gas me up just because I'm Mexican.
I'm not, dude. I've been to Mexico probably 40 times. I've been to 13 of the 28 states. Anyway, I've been all over Mexico. I've driven all over Mexico. I love Mexico. I go every year. So I'm not just gassing you up because you're part Mexican. I don't know. Let's see. And then Southeast Asia would be like another place where you can go and just like you were saying, Thailand,
Right.
The Philippines, Indonesia. you can go and live in a 4-star hotel in Indonesia on like a remote island for probably like $50 a day and live like a king, like have butlers and servants and
the people you'll
everything.
meet will be just remarkably cool and kind and happy.
Sometimes.
I know this is like, yeah. I mean, sometimes that's a good point. And this is kind of a thing that, a lot of highfalutin or like wealthy tourists will say like, oh, I went to this, less developed country and everyone was so nice and kind and happy. And it has become kind of a meme. But I do think there is an extent to which it's true. I remember the happiest people I met were in I don't know, like a shack in Mexico. They had like this meet that they would ever do every week. They just go there, they would drink beers, laugh, play dominoes, and then just like hang out with the chickens running around. And those dudes were like the happiest people. And they were making a bunch of crude jokes that, thank goodness, my Spanish wasn't that good at that time to realize. Some of them were at my expense, but they were, they were just happy. And we've talked earlier about this. We recently had the hurricane. I lost power for 4 days. You've lost power before in your life. And the weirdest thing that I experienced was how less stressed I was during that time, even though I was in total survival mode. I had no electricity. I had very, very spotty internet. Couldn't like send or receive messages. Food was like, my food was going bad. Thank God I had a really good neighbor who brought me a generator. And I talked to my own neighbor, and my own neighbor was like, I hope the power doesn't come back ever. Because he was saying his wife was off Facebook, his daughters were off their tablets, and he just had not had so much family time in such a long time. He was like stress-free. And so I don't know if there's a connection there, but there's something about being a person or a human, especially being a man, I think, that wants this reality and that doesn't like this digital world.
Yeah. I think Sebastian Junger wrote a cool book a couple years ago about the time he spent in war, being like a war journalist, being like embedded in with like soldiers who are like in the worst possible situation, getting shot at every day, watching friends blow up. And then he also went and interviewed people after Katrina and after like a lot of like horrible things, like what happened in Western North Carolina this week. And what he found was those people always say the same thing, which was, that was the best time of my life. People love having a common shared goal with their community. And so whether that's like your like unit of soldiers that you like become brothers with and like have a deeper connection with those people than anybody else you've ever connected with. And that connection, that adventure, like you're saying, especially for men, I think will always end up being like the best, most exciting time of their life. And so right. Maybe that's will come out of this for Asheville. Maybe they'll come out a lot stronger and say, we're really happy that we had a chance to like come together, help each other, and like get to know people in our community.
Yeah, well, certainly I think that there will be many bonds formed because of this. People need a purpose. So I was telling you earlier that in Hickory, where I live, we've just seen people flying overhead with their helicopters, going and delivering supplies to Asheville, going and delivering supplies to Morganton. They still don't have fresh water with their own personal helicopters, just like nonstop. At the local community college, they're taking donations and they're just shipping them to all these places in the area. People getting out their chainsaws and cutting down the debris in the road. It's just been like the community. And again, I don't mean to be sexist, but it's like a community of men immediately mobilized for their community to help those in need. Like I said, my neighbor gave me a generator. My other neighbor gave me an oil lamp. I gave them electricity from the generator that my neighbor gave me. So everyone's refrigerator was running. The kids were playing together. It was really like what life is supposed to be about. People have this intrinsic desire to help each other. And so, you're a bit of a libertarian. I'm a Christian conservative. I do think that we are supposed to live in a community where we help each other and not outsource all of that to some third party, like the government. If the government is the one doing all of the help, then what help do we need to give each other?
Yeah. Speaking of what I've been wondering this week is, why does the U.S. military not just like mobilize when something like this happens in Eastern Carolina? Have all their best people identified, be like, okay, there's 4,000 small towns. Let's take 4,000 choppers and drop off like internet, satellite phones, medical supplies, food and water to every one of those this afternoon, right? Like You're talking about like the biggest, most badass military in the world that can like completely mobilize and go to war anywhere in the world in like 12 hours or something, probably. Like, why couldn't they get together? Like, it's our tax dollars.
Right.
It's America. It's Americans. Like,
Well,
why
the
can't they
National
just
Guard
like,
specifically.
or anybody, like, they should be a full mobilization, just like it should have been for like the hurricane in Puerto Rico, who like,
Yeah.
people down there didn't have water for 18 months after the hurricane. Or like all the houses that got burnt down on Honolulu with the recent volcano there. It's like we have all these situations where it feels like it wouldn't be that hard to like mobilize and go and fix this situation with like not that much money, right? In comparison to like the national budget. Yeah, right. Which is probably like $1 or $2 trillion a year. Like, let's take a couple $1 billion and like just go and get this sorted as quickly as possible, be as helpful as possible. And it just seems like all the resources are there, all the manpower is there, the knowledge is there. It blows my mind. It doesn't make any sense
I'm trying to
why
look on
we
the
don't
bright
have those
side.
things in place.
Yeah. Yeah. The bear case of this is that there's a reason for them not to do it, right? Maybe it's just regulation. I think a lot of the science during COVID times was delayed because there were so many people wanting to check the processes to make sure that they could say this first and all that kind of, there was like a regulatory gunk in the way of like high speed access to information. So many other countries knew ahead of time that even if you had the vaccine, you could still transmit the virus. They had published papers about it, but the like CDC wouldn't say that until they had a like preponderance of evidence from a multinational conglomerate of scientists. And I think with the government in general, it's just slower because there's red tape. And so my hope is that, okay, you have this horrible disaster. Well, now let's slowly think of a plan. We don't like this plan? Okay, well, let's count. I think it's just a lot of people talking. So on the bright side of this is that you had real humans, real people on the ground, saving each other's lives, doing what they could to help each other. The bad side of this is that you had people die because of a slow response. And even still, there are still people without any access to leave their small towns that might have gotten completely demolished. Like Chimney Rock is one example of a town that's a nice, beautiful, crunchy hiking town gone, like off the face of the map. And people are also saying that it might be a weird time for semiconductors because the largest quartz mine in America has been flooded. And also North Carolina has the third richest lithium mines. I didn't know this. And so, lithium, quartz both got hit dramatically. A lot of those towns that were fighting feverishly to not lose their homes to these mines and to this industry have lost their homes now. And hopefully they get paid out really handsomely for those properties. And maybe that means that North Carolina will become the hub of semiconductors and quartz in the future, and we'll all just be rich.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I didn't know
Bullish
any of that.
NVIDIA.
Yeah, well, of course.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man. Yeah.
It definitely is. And yeah, it's rough. There was this like tweet from someone in the 82nd, I don't know. So I don't really know how these military names work, but 82nd Airborne or something, which I heard that specific group platoon was like that's the one they typically tend to deploy for natural disasters in this area. And he was saying that they were coming to the area, then they had to stop and go on standby because of the Iran-Israel conflict, like because they might have to be deployed to go do something over there. It could have been bait. I don't know, because it seemed like bait. But if that is true, it's kind of a bummer, right? That we would consistently prefer to aid our foreign allies than our own domestic citizens. And it does seem to be a theme.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It's shocking, like how reasonable and normal it seems to everyone on Earth that like that's what you should do in that situation if you're like a government. I mean, there's like it's just so common sense. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I am slightly getting a little bit nervous about going to the Saudi Peninsula for 2 weeks for Cosmoverse and Dubai.
I mean, I can see why you're nervous now, but probably you can take a plane to like Egypt or something and then fly from there. Who knows? But yeah, you'll be in dangerous airspace. Yeah. Hopefully they chill out. I think that's what everyone wants to happen. I mean, the cool thing is, according to actually official sources in Israel, there were no casualties from the missiles. People were wondering like, well, why are the missiles exploding on the ground? And there was a statement released by the IDF saying, well, it's because the Iron Dome and like the other SAM technology, surface to air missile defense stuff, only targets missiles that are projected to be harmful or threats. And if they're not, then they just ignore them. They let them smack into the ground. So it looks like there were just a bunch of misses that hit the ground. Hopefully that's the case. I would love for Israel to say, okay, well, we're going to blow up some more beepers. We're going to be very, very tactical on our response. Some very clear and obvious targets might get hit, and then they cool off for a few more months before inciting World War III.
Yeah, dude, it's horrible. I'm really hoping humanity can at some point like step up their game a little bit and stop with the war and the silliness. But it seems so many decades away, if ever.
Yeah, it's just weird, man. It's like Russia and Ukraine and Iran and Israel, and man, I don't want to get into global politics. So I'm just too ignorant to know about it. But
yeah, I
from a human's perspective, I just don't want people dying, especially I call myself a bleeding heart conservative. I just would love for people to be self-empowered, help each other, and I don't know, like find the light of life and grow.
Yeah, it's insane. When I was 20, I went to Palestine, or like I did a trip where I did like Israel, then Palestine, Jordan, and Turkey. It was sort of my first time in the Mideast. We ended up, so I went to Bethlehem, which is like popular town from the Bible, but it's within the Gaza like walls. It's just like, this is a wild experience. Like they are living, like you pull up and there is like a 40-foot wall around the entire thing. And so you are in this like weird kind of like zombie prison. We weren't supposed to stay the night there. Me and my buddies ended up staying the night there. I met like tons of cool folks. And then I leave that trip coming and like, I'm on Palestine side, Mm-hmm. I'm like 19 in like a liberal arts cultural anthropology degree. I'm like, I leave there and it's just like, this is insane. Like these people are prisoners. They don't get to leave. They're completely occupied. They have no rules. You have to have like a passport to get in and out of these like crazy walls. And then a couple years later, my wife went and did like a winter semester where she went to Egypt and Palestine and Israel and just studied like the conflict in the Middle East for a month. And so when we were in our 20s, we both sort of came away from that experience being on Palestine's side, right? Fully. And just being like, the Israelis are assholes and they are like keeping these people in prison and it's not right. And the people there are suffering. I want the people who are suffering the most to like get the most help. It was just like the simple way of looking at it back then. But then now as an adult, you start to think about it differently. You start to think like, so like what is the world that I want my kids to grow up in? Right. And it's like, well, I'd rather my kids grow up in a world where they can like smoke weed in Tel Aviv and go surfing, and and not be like living under some like very strict religious persecution. And so it's just interesting. It's interesting how my views have not necessarily changed on any of it, but it's that you can definitely see both sides. You can definitely see how the whole world is outraged and wants like the Palestinians, especially like, the women and children to like be safe and happy and healthy and well fed and get to live somewhere where there aren't rockets coming down all the time. But then you also can see like the Israeli side, I think now that I'm older, and I can see that that's the type of democracy that I want my kids to grow up in. And I don't want them to grow up, in a place where half the population isn't able to get education. And so anyway, it's I know nothing about it. I'm not qualified to talk about geopolitics in the Middle East. And I don't, almost no one is, right? Like none of the politicians have solved it. None of the academics have solved it. So I think the whole world is just looking at it and kind of sad knowing that there are no solutions here.
That's true. I mean, you can look at it from a bunch of different philosophical perspectives, which is like, have you heard of broken glass theory? It's pretty popular, especially in sociology, where, they looked at places where there was like broken glass windows or like shops that had been broken down, and people were more likely to commit crime in places that already looked like crime had been committed there, or places that looked run down, or places that looked like distressed. right? Whereas in a really nice and pristine area, even people who might otherwise be semi-criminal would, this place is nice, let me not mess with it. And so what you might see in Palestine is it's just a consistent broken glass. All the time. It's always just distressed and broken. And this weird thing with Hamas is I've heard a lot of people say, well, why don't you guys just unelect Hamas or elect Hamas out of power? They haven't had an election since, I believe, 2000. Well, let me get the correct date. I think it's 2004, but it might be 2007. It's been at least over a decade, right? They just haven't had an election. They haven't had the ability to have an election. At the same time, I was looking at this study in Palestine, just specifically Gaza, saying that the malnutrition rates are remarkably high. Like the vitamin D deficiency, vitamin C deficiency is just remarkably high. And these things affect your ability to think, to do, to function, to reason. And, it's a very, as you said, it feels like a bit of a, camp, prison, not a great place. But at the same time, there are some places that do have bustling economic zones. They do have stores and buildings, and it's not just a wasteland of nothingness, which I think some media tries to portray it as. Nevertheless, I don't know. The thing that gets me is I have talked to a few Israelis about this, and they always say, many of them want something like a two-state solution where Israel has full military control over Palestine and the West Bank. So it's like they can exist as an autonomous state as long as they don't have their own military and as long as Israel has economic control over every aspect of their life. And I'm like, well, that's apartheid. It might even be worse than apartheid. And no sovereign nation would ever want to agree to that. But what does that mean for a solution? I don't really know. It is a tragic situation, and I will never be on the side of saying because Hamas is bad, you can kill 30,000 civilians, mostly women and children. You're not going to find me saying that. It's just, I can't do that, right? Now, is Hamas evil? Absolutely, clearly, obviously. Right? They're traumatized. Imagine if your dad, your brother, your mom was blown up in an airstrike by North Carolina, right? And that happened multiple times. Eventually, you're going to start hating North Carolina and North Carolinians. Reasonably so. That's your family. It's the closest connection you have ever. I think something like 30,000 people. What is the population of Palestine? It's like 2 million?
Yeah. 2 million.
Okay, so 30,000. Let's do some math here. 30,000 divided by 2 million. That's 1.5% of the entire population.
Yeah,
is dead.
You know someone who died.
Yeah, you know multiple people, and many of them are your parents or your children. And because of that, there is no amount of justice that will ever come to you that will satisfy your rage. So, of course, young men are going to go join Hamas. Of course, they're going to be irrationally angry, racist, anti-Semitic. Of course they are. And likewise, if you're in the IDF, which it's consignment, so you're going to be, or conscription, you're going to be in the IDF because you're a young person in Israel, you're probably going to at least hear horror stories of someone in the IDF being killed by a terrorist. You're going to run into people who hate you. And so you're going to think, well, these people hate me. They dehumanize me. They want me dead. Granted, you have the best technology in the entire world to defend yourself, and they have sticks and stones and some, rockets that can't get past the Iron Dome, thank God. So it's a completely unfair battle, but you're also going to probably not favorably look upon those people. So I don't know, man. It's a very messy situation. Hope that we can all humanize both sides. Which people get really mad about. You can't humanize Hamas. Dude, I can humanize anybody because they're humans, Mm-hmm. They're people. There's a reason they got that way. There's a reason why they feel that way. If your buddies are dead, you're going to be mad. If your family is dead, you're going to be mad. If people want you dead, if you think that people want you dead, if you think that Israel wants to wipe you off the face of the earth, it doesn't have to be true or not. If you think that, you're going to be full of hate and anger. And vice versa. If you think that everyone in Gaza, everyone in Palestine are Hamas, and they all want to wipe out Israel from the what is it, to the river to the sea? If you think that all of them are thinking that, and they just want to genocide all of the Jewish people or Israeli people, you're not going to look at them very favorably, right? So I just hope we can start humanizing people instead of dehumanizing them. That's it.
Yeah, I love this broken glass idea. And it's actually the same idea has informed a bunch of my decisions over the last decade, which is how I think about my farm, how I think about investing in real estate, how almost anything is if it's not beautiful, you won't love it. And if you don't love it, you won't take care of it. And so that's my idea with my farm. I want it to be like the most beautiful place that I can imagine and take, because then I know I'll take care of it because it'll be beautiful and it'll feel like it's worth taking care of. And it's the same thing with real estate investing. So I used to buy like Section 8 houses in Louisville, and you buy them super cheap, and then the government would like direct deposit the money into your account. And so like as an investor, especially like back in 2012 when we were buying these houses for like 20 grand, um, it was amazing. It was like your return on investment, like it didn't even make sense. It was incredible. It was like, 2 grand down and $200 a month. And then like you're immediately know that the government's going to put $900 a month in your account. But it wasn't beautiful. None of the houses were beautiful. Going and like working on them and taking care of them was like not fun. And like people living in the houses, like weren't living good lives. Like in a lot of cases, like they were very stressed, not a lot of food, tons of family members trying to live there just because they were able to like get on the list and get this house. And so now I would rather like buy beautiful land and put like really cool, beautiful, interesting Airbnbs on them and then make money that way off of real estate and accumulate land that way because it feels better. Like when you're there working on the project, you're like standing next to a river or looking at a mountain, and it's just like it's inspiring and inspires the whole project. And so like it feels really good. And then when people come and stay there, they're going to feel really good. They're going to get like a little bit of peace. They're going to see some natural beauty that they typically don't get to see. And so I like that idea a lot. It has translated to it's informed a lot of big decisions I've made over the last decade.
Yeah, when I was living in Saudi Arabia, we had this little like corner store market that we would go to. It was run by two Jordani guys. They were hilarious and great. And like, it was nice to feel a little bit of like that Western culture because Jordan is a little bit more Western than Saudi. And so we would like walk to it multiple times a day just to like pick up food and whatever else. And the road was probably, I don't know, an inch or 2 inches high of just trash. So you were just walking on trash the whole way there and the entire way back. And because it was just trash, you would just see people throw trash on top of it because it was already trash. Why wouldn't you do that? Now, I think most of the Western people were like, they couldn't find it in themselves to do it because they just knew it was like wrong. But if that's just your culture, right? If that's just the way you've grown up with it since you were a kid, this has been trash road. Right? Why wouldn't you throw trash on it? It's trash road. What are you doing not throwing trash on it? It's what you're supposed to do. And I don't know. I feel like America might head towards trash road because we've stopped building beautiful things. Maybe that's a bit of a meme, but whenever I go to New York, whenever I go to big cities and I see, the Greco-Roman, was it neoclassical? There we go. Neoclassical buildings, the ones built in like the early 1900s, late 1800s, just like the library in New York. A lot of the banks, just these gigantic columns, intricate carvings, beautiful buildings that inspire you next to these humongous glass rectangles that just do not inspire, that demoralize you. I think we're moving towards much more demoralizing architecture all around us. And I don't know, we're seeing skyrocketing rates of mental illness in the US. I'm not saying it's architecture's fault, but I am saying that there is a distinct lack of beauty in our music, lack of beauty in our art, lack of beauty in our media. I mean, bad guys are now winning in the movies, and like the good guys are not particularly virtuous. It's just like everything is gross, and like people don't feel good anymore, and they're not like giving human love to each other. It's always love with an agenda. It's love to prove a point. It's love to make a social point of something or a grand standing of how virtuous you are rather than actually being virtuous and actually loving thy neighbor. And so I don't know, man, I just want to move to a time, not a place. I don't want to leave. I want to fix it. I want to move to a time in this world where we go back to valuing beauty, truth, and love, like those three things, right? Again, the real versions of them, not the fake popcorn version of them.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are places in the world who are still making beautiful things. Like I think about like Singapore, like the architecture is unbelievable. Istanbul's new airport.
Gorgeous.
Mumbai's airport. Was it Mumbai or Delhi? Yeah, Mumbai's airport was insane. There's different like Tulum in Mexico. It's like all the new architecture there is like this like real nature, like have trees planted everywhere and have trees like growing out of the walls and through the walls and like save the jungle and just kind of build like walls around it where it can. So like I think there are places, I think there are people who are trying to do that. People who are trying to be like, I'm not going to live in a boring structure. I'm not going to work in a boring structure. Like, let's do something cool,
Yeah, I
And
mean,
so that,
Airbnb is a phenomenal example of this. You look at Airbnb, and now I think you can sort by experiences or something like that, where it's literally, or like architecture, where you're going to the Airbnb specifically to be around beauty.
hmm yeah. And I think
And I know the way you build your buildings is based off of this.
yeah, definitely. It's got to be fun. It's got to be interesting. It has to be beautiful. It has to be somewhere beautiful. Like it has to inspire you. Like if you don't feel something when you're there, or like looking at the pictures before you go, like you're not going to want to go. And
There's
so
yeah, go ahead.
I just think I think the the younger generation is either, I think of someone like Val from Quasar. Like there
Love
are
that guy.
these like 25-year-olds who are really awesome and really thinking about the world in a different way, and they are wanting to fill the world with like beautiful music, beautiful architecture, beautiful products, even like crypto projects, like things that like really help people. And so those people are out there. A lot of them are in crypto, and it's really inspiring. And I think the thing that fixes Americans is travel. And I'm not talking like a Carnival cruise. Like really think that travel has like informed any amount of wisdom I've ever gathered in my life.
But you asked me like long term or at least medium term. If you just do like a vacation to a hotel, or like you said, the Carnival cruise, you're not gonna get what I think you're talking about, which is seeing another culture and experiencing another culture, and almost getting to the point where you start to feel like you're a part of that culture, or you get a little bit a little bit of it rubs off on you, and then you're like, oh, it can be different. It doesn't have to be like this. It doesn't have to be this superficial, like just drudgery all the way to death. You're just grinding until you die. It doesn't have to be like that. Many other cultures just care more about family, care more about friends, take the time out of their day to eat with each other. That you wouldn't go into a single house in Latin America at dinner time and not see them all at the table. It's just these cultures have different values that we have lost somehow in the rat race of whatever it was that infected us.
Yeah, I think it's just good for people to go and see what the universal truth is, which is we're literally all the exact same, trying to do the exact same things. And we
I wouldn't
have
use the
just
word
like,
literally.
well, I mean, I think so. What do you, I mean, literally, yes. Like the DNA is 99.999999 the same
Okay, is
between us humans.
97 the same as a banana?
Well, yeah, but I'm just, yeah, and maybe we're the same as that too, right? In some ways, like maybe
You're a
maybe
banana.
everything that's like sort of alive on Earth is part of like some sort of like small collective consciousness, and adds some sort of like positivity or negativity to that global connective consciousness. I'm not sure, but I'm saying that when you travel and you go to so many different places, I think the true wisdom to come away with is we're all the same. We have families, we're working, we're trying to make our families' lives better. And it's like that's a universal truth.
I think there's a tiny bit of nuance that needs to get put in there. I think that we're the same in some ways, which is we all exist. We want to survive. We want to experience good things. We want to be connected. We want to like experience love and not be lied to and not be abused. And we are, I think, deserving of all of those things. Right? I don't think we're all the same, though. I don't think that we have the same capacities in any respect. Like if I'm born without a leg, then I'm not the same as someone who's born with a leg. I'm not going to have the same experiences. If I'm born in like an Asian culture, especially let's just say Korean culture, so it's Christian but hyper crazy work ethic, you're going to school on Saturday and Sunday, like that's just a totally different grind than being born in Mexico, where you might take a siesta in the middle of the day. And so I don't know.
Right, but we're
fundamentally
base layer,
humans. Yeah.
the base layer, the hardware is the same.
Is
And
it though?
then
Because we're genetically different. Like there are some genes that predispose you to be more stressed, and some genes that predispose you to be taller. There's some genes that predispose you to be slightly different. I mean,
I think that's a
we're all
slightly
humans, certainly.
that's a slightly higher level on the stack, right? Is like, so I think we have all the same hardware, and then I think just above that we have like the genetic layer, which
But
can
we
be
don't have all the same
turned.
hardware. Like
And
I'm
the
bald, and
genetics
you got
can
a
be
head of hair.
on. I do have a nice head of hair compared to you.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm jealous, man.
yeah. Shout out to my grandfather for hooking me up. But
Like
yeah,
for example,
I fully disagree. And
there
and
are people in this space who
there's
are
these
remarkably
genetic,
more intelligent than me,
for sure. Yeah, same.
and that I just have different hardware. Like my processor's not as good as theirs, and my memory is not as good as my wife's, and my hairline is not going to be as good as my children because my wife's father has a full head of hair.
I think that paying attention to the differences amongst humans is really interesting. And that was pretty much that's been my whole life, right? Is like, I got a cultural anthropology and archaeology degree. And then I just like, even before that, but after, like, I just never stopped traveling. And so it's really interesting for me to go places and see the difference between like cultures. Absolutely. Like that's the interesting part of it, right? It's different. That's why you travel. You're going to see like a different way to do this thing, like to be a human at this time in history. And so of course, like paying attention to the differences is like, I think, more interesting, but the fundamental truth of that, like an astronaut would have if they go to space for the first time and see the Earth as a whole in one image, and they have this overview effect. So you just have this moment where you just realize we are all the same. We're all ants on this rock, walking around, looking for resources. We have emotional connections to like our closest lineage, and we're going to like take care of them first. But then also what takes care of them is like having a big community around them, and like so on and so on and on. And so
See,
like,
I'm allergic to that.
Yeah. So, well, that for me is, that to me is like a fundamental truth.
Because if you think that everyone's the same, then you'll treat them all the same. And you shouldn't, because we're not all the same. We're just different.
Your base for how you treat anyone, I think, shouldn't change based on the person. I think that like when
Are you kidding
like,
me? I'm not going to treat my 3-year-old the same as my 9-year-old.
Well, you're going to give them the same, like, I don't know, respect and patience and
No,
like
I'm not.
attention.
I'm not
that
going
like
to have the same amount of patience for my 3-year-old as my 9-year-old. I'm going to have more patience for my 3-year-old, who I don't expect to have the same temperament as my 9-year-old.
Yeah, that makes sense. But you're talking about, I'm just talking like at the very, very base level that you can find, that you're going to treat any other human with a certain amount of like dignity and respect. And then of course, like there are situations where that you find out you're not dealing with like a trustworthy actor on the other side of your conversation, and then at that point you have to change how you act towards that person.
Yeah, because everyone's different. I mean, I think the extent to which I agree with you is that people are humans, right? Humans are, in my opinion, they have a soul, right? I'm a Christian, and all of those souls can be saved. They're all worthy of, they're all worthy of being seen as people and understanding that they have struggles and they've gone through life, right? That's true. That all unites us. We were all born. That is true. And we've all gone through struggles. I can't think of a single person who hasn't. Even having everything given to you is a struggle in itself. And all of that should be respected and understood. And you should try to sympathize and empathize with those things. But no one's struggles are the same. Not a single person. And no one's starting conditions are the same. Not a single person's starting conditions are the same. So their genetics are not the same. Their parents were not the same. Their economic status was not the same. Like no two people are the same, aside from the fact that they're people, humans, and uniquely different from every other animal because they're human. That is the only thing that I think is uniting among us.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't agree with that perspective at all.
But where is it wrong?
I think that humans are capable of a certain range of emotions. Like every human fits somewhere within a perspective of like they can be this happy or this sad. They can have this much joy, they can have this much like peace or this much stress or whatever it is, and everyone fits into, there is a certain range of human emotion that is possible, and I think we all fit somewhere within that, but we are all within that basically trying to do the same thing,
which is what?
Survive.
I think that's true to an extent. I mean, at the end of the day, if in the way in which we treat people is going to be similar. You're not going to go out and treat people worse or better based off of like any superficial quality. Same here. It's just that you find the beauty in the unity of like humanity. And I'm seeing each person as like a hyper specified individual. And you are too. I'm not trying to bash anything about your perspective. I'm just saying that our philosophies end up at the same place, which is treat people very well with kindness. I just worry that a lot of people who take your perspective.
But do you think Christianity is what's informing this perspective for you? Do you think that like Christianity is a filter in which you're like
definitely
seeing this through?
Absolutely. Because if I wasn't Christian, I think I would be a very hateful person. I think that I would see the differences in humanity and say, we should optimize. We should optimize somewhere. And maybe it's like humanism or transhumanism. How can we optimize humanity? What kind of tech can we build? And then we're only really helping the hyper wealthy who have access to that tech. If you're just looking at things from a mathematical perspective, you can go into some really, really dark places with human differences. Absolutely. And I don't want to go there. And Christianity makes me not go there. Christianity is like, no. Every single person on the planet is made in God's image. Every single one of them, no matter what. And you're supposed to love them, no matter what. And there's a reason why you're supposed to love them.
Christianity points to my idea that everyone's the same.
Not at all.
Okay.
All made in God's image. Yes. Similarity, that's one of them, but they're not the same in any meaningful sense. Like, if I have two pencils, one of them's a red pencil, one of them's a, green pencil, or just like a regular lead pencil. They're not the same, but they're pencils.
Yeah. This is also my problem with like prescribing to a specific religion, is that every idea that you encounter from then on, you have to force through that perspective of Christianity before it gets to you. You know what I mean? It has like, there's an extra filter. There's an extra amount of like information that you have to see every other like philosophical perspective through before it comes to you.
And thank God for it. Because when I didn't have it, I was depressed. I was anxious. I found my outlet in drugs because I didn't have a filter. There was nothing to stop bad ideas from getting into me. There's nothing to stop like poison from entering into my veins and my thoughts and my mind and my soul. And so this filter that I've adopted has saved me in a million ways. And I am healthier, happier. I have a huge family. I've been blessed 1,000-fold over. And I can't even, I wish that I could like take this thing. When I was in high school, I won 2 superlatives. One was like most likely to be friends forever with my best friend, Quincy. Shout out to Quincy. He's a welder. Yeah, he's awesome. And the second superlative was like most likely to find a cure. And the great irony of my life is that I found it and no one would ever believe me. Like I studied Buddhism, I studied Hinduism, I studied Taoism. I did religious studies in college as well as philosophical studies in college. I studied, Nietzsche, I studied Aristotle. I love virtue ethics. Ayn Rand, I think, is a philosopher who doesn't get enough credit for what she did. I read Plato. I read, who's the guy who wrote Virgil? And like, you can read all, and the whole purpose was trying to find out what the truth was. And then I found it. And it wasn't by my own efforts. It was by giving up and saying, please help me, whatever you are. I'll call you the universe. I'll call you God. I'll call you like the divine spark. I don't know what you are, but I know there's something up with this universe. Whatever you are, give me a sign, lead me to the truth. All I want is the truth. I don't care what flavor it is. That's what I want. And then I was given it. And the things that I could not defeat myself were immediately defeated. And I was mind blown. I was like, oh my God, this was the truth? This thing that I had bashed my entire high school life, this thing that I had railed against as a middle schooler, this thing that I joked at, that thought was stupid, like that was only adopted by the lowest dregs of society who couldn't think for themselves, the opiate of the masses, the things that were only for the simple-minded, narrow-minded, redneck folk in the back roads, that was the truth. That was a thing that could save me. That was a thing that would cure my depression, my anxiety, all of my addictions. That was a thing that would take me from being a lowly school teacher who couldn't figure out what he was doing in his life to living in a house with a beautiful family who he has overflowing love with. That. And so for me, it's not some dumb filter that like I have to fit everything into. It's this grace that I have been given to protect me from things that would otherwise hurt me.
Man, that'll preach. I'm happy you found that. And of course I have like the exact opposite perspective.
I know. But oh man, we should get into
Yeah.
this in the podcast because I know we have to go. But you know what? I'll save the question for later because if I ask it now, it'll be a whole rabbit hole.
Yeah, I have so much I want to say as well. But
I'll
you know
let you
what's
say
cool?
it. Give me 5 minutes.
If we can survive religion and politics, then that means we're actually friends, and we can survive any conversation. So
This
it's
is the
awesome.
thing I love about you, is that I know when I talk to you, I know when I disagree with you, it's going to be good faith. You're not going to hate me. I'm not going to hate you. I'm not going to see you as an enemy. You're not going to see me as an enemy.
Absolutely. And I actually like, although I'm like, completely atheist to many ideas, like specifically like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, definitely. Agnostic to other ideas that I've studied less. I still am excited and happy when people have it and they love it, and like Christianity is meaningful to you and your family. And so like, if it's good for you and it's bringing joy and it's bringing peace, then like I want it. And it's the same for my parents. It's like I would never want my mom to lose Christianity. Like it means a lot to her. And I think it like takes up a lot of her like thought life, and calms a lot of her worries about death and different things, and gives her like an outlet, a place to like pray and puts takes some of that stress and anxiety that she feels and sort of like gives it to like a more like powerful being out in the universe. But yeah, maybe we should get into religion at a different time. Is something I've thought a lot about as well.
Well, I'll let you give your take in the next episode of Magical Internet Money, where we talked for magical internet money. We did for I think 3 seconds. I think I asked you about October and you gave me your bull bear case. Well, anyways, everyone, thank you so much for listening to our very first completely unrelated to crypto podcast. Apparently, if you liked it, fantastic. If you hated it, fantastic. Thanks for listening, and have a wonderful rest of your day.